So now, since it is 9:30, it is 9:30, like 9:30 on the smash, right there. Kurt's not messing around. Literally, he comes in at 9:30. It's 9:30, and Kurt is in at 9:30. Dude, you ain't messing around, man.
Sorry, should have given a couple-minute buffer. Running around here this morning.
I mean, dude.
Train's delayed per usual, so just walked into the office.
Well, and that's why I wanted to book it at 9:30, because I remember what happened last time. And
Yes.
if everything hits the right way, then you're in the office. You get the chance to grab your coffee and the pseudo breakfast, sit there in the booth, and then you're good to go at 9:30. But those darn trains.
No, I'm in before 9 if trains all work. They never work.
And then, of course, they never work. Reason we always like to bring you in is to talk the money aspect of things. And before you came in, I was discussing Real Madrid and how their new old president, Florentino Perez, wants to bring in Jose Mourinho to be their new old manager starting next season. And the math that you guys do to put together the top 50, and with Real Madrid at the top, tippy top, with some staggering numbers. At least they're not as much in debt as Barcelona is. There's my dig for the morning, at least in the opening paragraph. How much work goes into assembling this? Because in reading all of the parameters that it takes for you guys to come up with the top 50, it almost seems like it's something that you start 3 years ago to get ready to produce last week. I mean, what kind of work goes into this thing?
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it, and it is not a. It is always a long-term project. It's something we're working on year-round. Whether we're talking about global soccer, NFL, NBA, we're looking at what's happening in the marketplace, transactions that are going on, either control sales, which do not happen very frequently, or LP stake sales, which happen more regularly, but are not necessarily a perfect line in terms of a direct line in terms of what a control of a team would cost. And so what's nice about not MLS, but the European clubs certainly is that you have access to their finances, as we see all the time. That makes it a heck of a lot easier because you have all the information, really. You have revenue, which is the number that most bankers think about as the baseline when they're looking at valuations. But you have profit and losses, as we see all the time when people write about Chelsea and all the other clubs about how much they're losing. So that's how we think about it. And then you look at biggest transaction certainly over the last 12 months, Atletico Madrid at the top tier here. But global soccer is tricky because you have different countries. You have certainly promotion and relegation, which the tier, at the very top tier, we don't normally have to worry about it. The Real Madrids, Barcelonas, they're not getting relegated. We traditionally think about that in the EPL with the big six clubs, but this year has proven that they're not necessarily relegation proof, as we'll see. So it's a lot. We spend a lot of time on it, and then really crank it up over the last month.
I mean, is it like Google Docs, PDFs, big white dry erase boards off camera, like I'm looking at here, like the big 4 foot by 6 foot with a bunch of numbers and different colors and everything? And how do you assemble all of this and make sure that you've gone back to the right files to make sure that you've got all of the information in the right?
Yeah, I'm old school. I use Excel. I track everything through Excel, and we got a long Sportico launched in 2020, so we're starting to build up a pretty good, rich history with 6 years of historical data, and sometimes reference back my former days at Forbes and the valuations we used to do. Longer historical context than just 6 years.
Was there one particular club, either good or bad, in this 50 that surprised you when you came up with the information that you did? Whether, I didn't know that they had this much going for them. Or I didn't know these guys were in this much trouble. Was there a surprise when you were assembling the top 50?
I think what really jumped out, talking to bankers, investors, is England. Everybody we talked to said Premier League championship. That is, they are head and shoulders above everybody else, and we've known that for a long time, right? The best soccer league in the world, but in terms of where people want to put their money, they're thinking about the Premier League, which is really interesting because it's very hard to stay in the Premier League right now because you have arguably 18 ownership groups that like they don't want to be in the championship. These are like well capitalized, very aggressive. I mean, with the 49ers coming in and buying Leeds and Shad Khan buying Fulham, and I mean the turnover, obviously Newcastle, Piff coming in and buying Newcastle. These, it stretches a lot farther than just the big six, in terms of this group of just powerhouse ownership groups. And so, but still, that said, because of the TV money, and you look around what's happening, obviously France, TV money has basically evaporated. Italy, is kind of holding on. Is DAZN the partner you want long term for your TV money? They ran away from France at the drop of a hat. So there's some concerns there. La Liga is obviously so top heavy, with those three multi-billion-dollar clubs. And Germany's Germany. I mean, Germany's super steady, but hard to buy into because of the ownership rules, the 50+1. So, so really, overwhelmingly, people talked about getting into the Premier League, but of course, the finances are so messed up. Everybody's losing money. I mean, 16 out of the 20 clubs lost money in the 24-25 season, because the competition is just brutal to either secure a Champions League spot for those top tier clubs. Everybody else, it's to stay up. Big difference between finishing 17th and 18th. And then you've got the clubs in the championship who are spending because they want to move up. So it's the competition is just is brutal right now. So EPL way up this year over the last 2 years in terms of slots in the top 50, up to 17, I believe, in this year's top 50, 16 or 17. So including a club that's going to be relegated, either West Ham or Tottenham's getting relegated. They both make the cut.
35 of the 50 are either Premier League or Major League Soccer. And to see some of the numbers that are attached to Major League Soccer, who is still, I believe, in a growth economy where you have owners who want to pick up franchises and then they want to build their own barn. So that way they can control their own finances and have all the revenue streams heading in that one direction so they can continue to have the value of their club continue to increase and without any kind of outside influence or somebody like Aries Management knocking on your door, John Texter. I thought it was really interesting to see just the sheer depth of half of Major League Soccer in this list now, considering what we've seen over the last, say, 5 years when it comes to the growth of Major League Soccer on the whole.
Yeah. Yeah, you're 100% right here. 18 clubs overall made the top 50. The top 15 clubs are all in Europe. So Major League Soccer and Inter Miami's starting to knock on the door. They rank number 16, and their revenue in their new building and with Messi, they're targeting $250 million this year, which again, that's a bottom. That's the bottom of the Premier League. That's a big number. That's I don't know,
that ain't bad for a new barn, man.
That's pretty good. That's what 6x, 7x what Vancouver is going to do. So it's because of promotion and the lack of promotion relegation, MLS sets a floor value for clubs, and MLS is, to your point, very much a real estate play. These clubs are looking to build top state-of-the-art soccer-only stadiums, develop the real estate around it, build really strong local. I mean, you look around Columbus, Cincinnati, Austin, what they've been able to build in smaller markets, vibrant scene, great revenue. And now the bigger markets are starting to come online. Obviously Miami, their new building opening, New York opening their new building, Chicago is going to self-fund a brand new building, and that's been the drag, right, in MLS these years. These big market clubs that haven't performed. So overall, 18 clubs versus Premier League 16. Premier League clubs make the cut, but you look at the value. I mean, the valuations are still very different. So the 16 Premier League clubs are worth almost $40 billion. The 18 MLS clubs that make the cut are worth $16 billion. So the price point at the top is very different. But because of just the structure of MLS, you have a floor value for really what a club is worth. But MLS, they haven't. It goes back to media, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do not have the media money, so the MLS valuation growth has been pretty slow. I mean, as we look over the last few years, we've had outliers like Miami, New York, and Chicago getting new buildings, but overall, the the revenue multiples to get into MLS have come down a lot, and they've really lagged the other big four North American sports leagues in terms of value creation.
Right, and when you look at, I guess, the future of Major League Soccer, there is this beacon, or I guess this is light at the end of this tunnel, and I'm intrigued at Team 16 when Lionel Messi finally does hang him up at the age of 74
Yep.
or whatever. And it's just
Jorge Mas can only dream.
I know, and it's you're sitting there and you're going, okay, so what do you do for an encore to keep your value where it is? Because you've got the big dog. The big dog brought in a bunch of other big dogs to be this this central force in bringing Major League Soccer forward. And I've been one that has always been signing off on this. It's like, okay, great, the Moss brothers and initially Marcelo Claure and David Beckham, they want to bring the league forward by bringing in all these stars and spending all this money and building a new barn and all this kind of stuff. Now, what are you going to do for an encore when he finally retires to keep your value where it is and to keep the league where it is in its growth and its relevance and all these kinds of things? I mean, it's not going to happen, tomorrow, but I think it's an interesting point here where 18 of the franchises in Major League Soccer are the top 50. So what happens when one of your marquee dudes leaves and retires? How do you keep up? How do you keep up with the Joneses in that? That to me is going to be really interesting in how the league approaches it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the problem. And there is only one Messi, right? They're not bringing in. There's not another Messi walking in the door. So they've got to figure out, who is that next tier of star that you can bring in. And again, it will not have the same impact as, the most famous athlete on the planet. That's just not realistic. So they recognize that. But you bring up a great point, because what's happened, MLS is facing an inflection point, right? Because you have the clubs like Inter Miami, LAFC, Chicago. I mean, these clubs, they want to go for it. They want to be aggressive. They want, they're telling MLS, let's, take the brakes off. Let's go. We've got to push harder. And they've got Apple behind them saying the same thing. Apple wants more stars coming into this league. They don't want parity. You see the value of super teams and what that brings to the league. The idea that everybody should have a, reasonable path to winning every single year. That's not how a traditional sports. That's not how a sports.
It can't be reasonable when it comes to determining a champ. Come on.
No. But you have teams that want to spend and they want to bring more stars to the league. Now the league will, push back on that and say, listen, let's look at the history here. Messi has been incredible. David Beckham did incredible things. But if we look at the history of bringing in big name designated, Zlatan is great. But the history, you could rattle off 10 names that came in who were going to, again, not be Messi impact, but big superstars that came in that flopped in MLS. Didn't move the needle at all. But you look at what Messi's done. Well, look at Son's doing in LAFC, which again, he's not the best soccer player in the world or most famous, but he's
You
a
are
unique market, a
Yes.
unique market that has unlocked value. And I think that move, maybe even again, because Messi is unreplaceable, but I think that move has clubs rethinking like, huh, we don't necessarily have to chase whoever the person, Cristiano Ronaldo, or to come and play in MLS. I mean, but there are those players that be like, wow, that guy's a needle mover in ways that, just because he's not the most famous player on the planet, he can really make an impact for us again on the pitch and then off as well.
You find that individual or group of individuals in an untapped market, which is what I think LAFC did when they brought in Sun Young-min. And you've opened the doors to an entirely different group of folks to your product. And so I thought that was a fantastic move by LAFC. And you mentioned the inflection point of Major League Soccer. And I keep looking at team number 9 on your list. And it's Chelsea over in England. And Bowley Clearlake comes in. They've spent, I believe the official term is $11 billion. And they're just kind of there. I mean, so for all of that investment that Bowley Clearlake has brought in, and then what Aries management, and that's another part of this whole discussion when it comes to, equity firms and keeping an eye on their investments and what they might be able to hop in on. You're getting to an inflection point, but then do you want to get to that point where the governor is completely out of the golf cart? You're doing what Chelsea is doing and what other clubs are doing, and it's not benefiting really your investment, because all you're doing is you're just basically, look, man, you just reversed the vacuum cleaner, and it's like that old stunt that they used to have on the game show where you're in the hermetically sealed room and the dollar bills are just flying all over the place and you're trying to grab onto them. That's what it seems like with Chelsea. And all they're doing is throwing money at a problem, and they're running 22 different holdcos, I think, if I remember correctly, 22 different subsidiaries, because I've got the tree somewhere in my It's like that you're riding a real dangerous game at points, and that inflection point can cause you to make a decision. It's going to be time to really put that thought pattern, put that big thinking cap on when it comes to Major League Soccer about taking that next step and having more teams come into this top 50 and more teams go higher in this top 50.
Yeah, no, MLS does not want to. They do not want to go down that path that we've seen Chelsea do, sovereign wealth funds do, where they just are lighting money on fire. They do not want a league that just is ignoring losses and just losing, in Chelsea's case, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Chelsea, really hard one, talking to people, really hard one to value. Outside, beyond Tottenham and West Ham, Chelsea probably the third hardest club when talking to people what it's worth, because we all saw the incredible work that was done in terms of people on the forensic accounting going much deeper than just what's reported at Company's House, but tying it all together, and all the financial shenanigans over the last couple of years with selling the hotel, selling the women's team just to comply with league rules on spending. To themselves. Yeah, I should have made that more clear. To themselves, which again, Newcastle just pulled off the same thing, selling its stadium to itself. It's a hard one to value. And you talk to people about Chelsea, and they say, yes, but it's Chelsea. It's in London. It's in the good part of London. Like, if they, again, hit the market again, there'd be people rushing in the door to get this. Now, and they still have the same fundamental problems with a stadium. How do you figure out next steps for a stadium? Being in the good part of London's great, but it also makes it, next to impossible to build something new.
See Manchester United.
Yeah, so it's wild. I mean, it's the wild wild west in Europe, because these clubs are competing with spending with each other, and we saw PSG rack up hundreds of millions of losses year after year with their super squads, and now, ironically, have cut back their player spending dramatically, and suddenly win Champions League, and here in the Final Four again, without all the superstars. But they're competing with the Premier League can put in stricter financial controls, which I think most owners would like to see to protect themselves from each other. And you have all these American owners buying into clubs in England and would like to see some sort of tighter cost controls like exist in all the North American major sports leagues. But again, you're competing with Real Madrid, you're competing with Barcelona, you're competing with Bayern Munich for European competitions. So do you want to be hamstrung there where you can't afford the best talent when you're trying to win Champions League or Europa Cup? And so it's soccer economics are fascinating. It's just wild.
And this is why everyone should be Bodo Glimt. That is the answer to this. And when the finances come up with what you guys do at Sportico, and you specifically, I don't know how many sleepless nights you have, especially when you're getting close to deadline, to make sure your math is right. You've double sourced it, and I'm sure that you've blown up Kieran Maguire's phone about 19 different times. It's like, yo, dude, we're this close, but I got to ask you one more question. It's at sportico.com. It is all over.
He's fantastic. Swiss Ramble is the place to be. He does incredible forensic work on every soccer club, big and small.
Yes. So if you would please, sir, cut the promo and let everybody know where they can look at all of this fantastic information. And I know that you're starting on the 27-28 version of this right now when the second week get off and working for what's going on. But go ahead and cut the promo. Let everybody know where they can watch us and see this.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, sportico.com. You can find all the great content we do on the business of sports, as well as on all social feeds. You can find me at K Badenhausen on Twitter, largely posting occasionally on what's happening on the business of sports, soccer, and valuations and otherwise.
Yes, that's why we bring you on. We bring you on for the otherwise. So if at any time you want to come in, you got the green light. You want to vent your spleen about anything. Hey, I got something going on. You want to break any news? You hit me over the head. Hey, John, I want to come in here and I want to talk about something. I want to talk about coffee and what I put in my coffee every morning. Literally, you got a green light, my friend. It's always great to see, especially this time of year when you come out with all the numbers and we get to break bread and find out about all this stuff. It's always cool to see you, my friend. Don't be a stranger. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me on.